Our talk today is going to be this idea of attention, your greatest currency. So, some of you know, some of you don't, this metaphysical teaching, this idea that where your attention goes, energy flows. Anybody ever hear that one? Thank God I've got some hands up. If not, man, what have we been doing here, right? There's also another one. It's called the law of mind action, which states thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Anybody ever hear that one? Good. Yes. Very good. So, Fillmore states in the 12 Powers, he says, life in and of itself is not intelligent. It requires directive power of any entity that knows where and how to apply its force in order to get the best result. So Fillmore knew that we all have this ability inside of us to actually focus our energy. And what he's talking about when he says directive power, he's talking about the act of paying attention, right? And what he realized is that when we learn how to quote unquote apply its force, in other words, focus our attention or pay attention, we get the best results. That's what he's talking about. And he realized that your attention, your ability to focus on something is your greatest currency. It wasn't money. It wasn't all the other things that we were told about. It's this idea of focusing, which is way more powerful than money, because he knew that once he learned how to focus his attention, then he could pretty much create whatever he wanted to. And so he could create as much as money as he wanted to. And did he create a lot of money in his life? Oh, yeah. Right? But he and Myrtle created so much more. I mean, think about it. They created an international movement called Unity. They created Unity Village. And if you've ever been there, you would know it sits on about 100 acres. They, for a while, had the largest printing press east of the Mississippi back in the early 1900s. They were drilling oil back there. They had farms. They had you would not believe all the stuff that they were doing at Unity Village back in the day. And to this day, it's still there and it's really beautiful. And if you get a chance to go there, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's a pretty magical place, right? And they did this by this one simple promise, this idea, this focusing your attention, focusing on whatever it is that you're wanting to create in your life. So then, of course, that begs the question. My question for you this morning, because you know I'm always going to make you think and hopefully feel a little bit too. What are you paying attention to? What in this moment has your attention? We're always paying attention to something. There's always something going on that we're paying attention to, but what is it that you're paying attention to? For anybody that's been following us the last couple of weeks, you would know that we've been talking about this idea of going from being and living an unconscious life to living a conscious life. And we talked about how when you're living unconsciously, what happens is you just keep repeating the same stuff over and over and over again, and it feels like you're stuck and nothing changes. However, we also talked about the idea that you have the opportunity to start becoming conscious and living your life in a way where you're paying attention and you're like, maybe this thing is showing up for a reason. And I've spent the last 2 weeks talking about that, right? But in order to go from being unconscious to being conscious, guess what it takes? Your attention. Oh, you mean I got to start paying attention? Yes, right? And so this idea of attention. Because when you learn how to focus your attention, then all of a sudden, literally what's happening is the universe, because the universe fully knows who and what you are, which is a divine reflection of God, the universe goes, oh, they're focusing on this thing. I guess we should support them. And I know it kind of sounds silly, but it's the honest to God truth. How many people have noticed that when all of a sudden they decide to start something new, then all of a sudden you'll start seeing things show up in your life? It's going to be a person. It's going to be a book. It's going to be a friend. It's going to be a conversation. It's going to be a song on the radio. But all of a sudden you start noticing whatever you're focusing on, all of a sudden it's like these synchronicities start to happen. And you'll start to notice that. Has anybody had that experience before? Yes. Yeah. And why is that happening? Oh, I don't know. Probably because of who and what you are. And probably because you decided to focus, and probably because all of a sudden the universe loves you and supports you and wants to help you in whatever it is that you're trying to figure out in your life. And so then that's what happens, because we started to focus, right? And think about this. The opposite is of paying attention is not paying attention. To me, the greatest example of that is, if you ever had or seen just a wide open field that just nobody does anything with, and they just leave it unplanted, and the field does whatever it does. It grows whatever it grows, and whatever happens, happens. That's what happens when we don't focus our attention. Where, as opposed to, hey, I think I'm going to make a garden. Hey, I think I'm going to have flowers. Hey, I think I'm going to have vegetables. Hey, I think I'm going to do this, which is much more focused. And does that make either one of them right or wrong? No, we're not judging anybody here at all. But what I'm saying is, at least for me personally, I like having a little bit of focus. It helps me. And especially, and that's what I want to talk about this morning, is the idea of focusing on your divinity, your relationship with God. Because everything out there is grabbing at our attention. Everything is saying it's more important than that relationship. And what I would sit here and argue with you until I'm blue in the face is, there's nothing more important than your soul. There is nothing more important than your relationship with God. Well, then that begs the question, what are you doing about that? What does that look like for you? For some people, maybe it's coming here every so often. That's fine. But for me personally, it is a constant thing that's going on in my mind. And I know for some of you, you're doing the same stuff, whether it's through song, whether it's through reading, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through breath work, whether it's standing out in nature and hanging out and giving a tree a big hug. We all have different ways of doing this. But my question to you is, are you making that a priority? And again, there's no judgment here, but you know me, I'm always going to poke. I'm always going to prod. I'm always going to make you think a little bit. Because my observation has been that when I go into relationship with God, that relationship is just like, I don't know, a relationship I have with a human being. And what does that mean? It means that if I pay attention to the relationship, then all of a sudden that relationship grows. And for me, it's constant now. Every single morning I wake up, you know this. I wake up and I spend a couple hours every morning, prayer, meditation, writing, reading, all the stuff that I do. Why do I do that? Because the relationship with God is that important to me. Because I want the lived experience that I talked about earlier. I want to be able to hang out with God. I want to be able to listen. I want to be able to hear. And what I would say is that when you actually make this a priority, you will start to have those experiences. How many people hear when Spirit is talking to them? Show of hands. I know you're here. I know you're here. I know you're here. I know you're here. To those people that don't hear, I've got news for you. It could be good news and bad news. The good news is God is always talking to you. So if you're not hearing God, maybe it's not exactly because God isn't talking to you. Do you ever think that maybe you're just not slowing down enough to listen to God? Damn. Did he just really say that? You mean God's always talking to me and I'm not hearing God? Yeah. So in other words, I'm just not slowing down enough to listen to God. Maybe. Just maybe. That's what's happening. So in the Bible, I think Jesus illustrates this point really well. It's a story about the rich man, and it says, again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for someone who is rich to enter to the kingdom of heaven. Right? Most people hear this passage and they think it's about what? Jesus condemning wealth. Wrong answer. From a unity perspective, he isn't necessarily talking about money at all. He's talking about attachment to things other than spirit. That's what he's talking about. And he's talking about, where is the rich person's attention going more often than not? On all the stuff, all the money, everything else out here. But what happens is they're forgetting what's in here. That's really what the story is about. So the story is there's a young ruler. This guy's got a lot of money. And Jesus says, hey, go sell all your possessions and give it to the poor. Then come follow me. And the man walks away sad because he has great possessions. He's got a lot of stuff. And he doesn't want to let go of the stuff, right? So most people interpret the story again. Rich have a hard time getting into heaven. That's not true at all. Abraham, David, Joseph of Arimathea, they were all loaded. They had a ton of cash. They did. They just didn't forget to make the priority in their life their spiritual life. They didn't ignore it. So wait a minute, let me get this right. You can be spiritual and have a lot of money? Duh. Where does it ever say you can't have money if you're spiritual? Where? Show it to me. I want to see it. I want to hear about it. That is not my experience in any way, shape, or form. Not at all. Right? So clearly, wealth isn't the issue. Fillmore consistently taught about biblical people and objects represent different states of consciousness, right? The rich man represents a consciousness that's become attached to their outer world, not just the money, possessions, status, control, opinions, their identity. Anything that we think is going to give us security other than God. Anything. The problem isn't necessarily what he owes. The problem is what owns him. What owns him are all these other things. The camel, when he says it's the camel, it would be easier, right? The camel represents your mind. Why? What do camels do? They carry burdens. They're loaded. It's weighed down. It's full. It can't pass through a narrow opening. Why? Because it's carrying so much stuff until everything is let go. So that's kind of like us. Oh, really? Yeah, it's like us. It means that we are, in a sense, carrying all these different things, and we focus all of our attention on everything else because we think that's more important than our relationship with God. The baggage isn't the money, it's everything that occupies your attention. Worry, fear, resentment, comparison, news, politics, social media, old wounds, control, safety. Just another thing thrown on the back of that camel that takes our attention away from where? Right there. And that's what it does. The kingdom, which unity understands as a state of consciousness, just understand is always there. Like I said earlier, God's always talking to us. Guess what? Well, this divine consciousness is always there as well. You can have that experience whenever you choose it, but guess what? You, not God, has got to be the one that chooses it. You're the one that says, this is the priority. This is the thing that I'm going to focus on. This is the thing I'm going to pay attention to. This is the thing I'm going to put some effort to make it such a huge part of my life. You don't have to do that. Nobody is going to judge you if you decide, nope, that's not what I want to do. No one's going to do that. And I know some, especially from the traditional teachings, go, well, I don't know about that. You're not being judged. You're not being judged. Have you ever noticed when you don't do it? Do you have somebody show up and sit at your door and say, hey, you're not doing that? No, it's not the way that it works. It just isn't. That's not it, right? But in the story in the Bible, that's what's happening, is that we can't experience because our attention is just too scattered. The kingdom isn't hidden from us. It's crowded by everything that we've chosen to carry. That's what's going on. Or everything that we've paid attention to, or we are paying attention to. And notice something fascinating when Jesus, he doesn't argue with him. He doesn't argue with the man. He doesn't say, well, he doesn't. He just exposes what has his attention. And the rich man can't even imagine a life without the thing that defines him. When the truth is, that's not what's defining him at all. His attention, in some ways, has become imprisoned. Anybody have that one? Where you're being imprisoned by something? Mm-hmm. And this once again illustrates the point that the greatest currency isn't money, it's your attention. It's your attention. The rich man has invested literally all of his attention into everything that's out there, and Jesus simply invites him back to redirect it. You know, when we really think about this, perhaps what Jesus was really inviting the rich young ruler to discover was not simply to give away his possessions, but just to simply make room. And maybe as you leave here today, my hope and prayer is that you stop and think about that for a minute. Where could there be room in my life where I can make some room for God? To create a space for something infinitely more valuable than anything else that we could be spending our time paying attention to, right? Again, this relationship with the divine is just like everything else. And when you pay attention to it, then it grows. When you don't, it doesn't. Seems pretty simple. I don't think this is terribly complicated. But when you never pay attention to this thing inside of you, then often my observation has been I start to feel like I'm off, like there's something missing in my life. Anybody ever have that one? Yes, we all have. We all do it, right? And it's not because God has moved. God hasn't moved anywhere. It's because your attention has moved. That's what's doing it. Because every single day the world is asking you for your attention. Your phone asks for it. The news asks for it. Your worries ask for it. Your to-do list asks for it. Your fears ask for it. And all the while, the still small voice of spirit, it doesn't compete. It's not going to compete. It's not going to argue with you. It's not going to demand that you do anything. It just waits patiently, lovingly, quietly. And so here's a thought I leave you with. This week, don't just ask the question, what do I need to get done? Why right next to that question don't you put the following? What deserves my attention? Or perhaps even a deeper question, which would be, have I intentionally given any of my greatest currency today to the one who gives it to me? Why does he do this to us? Why? Why does he ask these questions? Right? I don't know, but for me, the greatest relationship I have is with God, and that does not grow by accident. It is very intentional in my world, and I'm also inviting you to consider making it very intentional in your world as well. Having said that, I am so incredibly grateful to have you here. Each and every one of you fills my heart. I want you to know that. I don't care if it's your first time here. I don't care if you're here in person. I don't care if you're here watching us online. I just want you to know how much you fill my own heart. I also want you to know that you're doing an amazing job. I also want you to know that being down here right now is not the easiest thing to be doing. And I want you to also understand, for those people that are struggling, that I'm with you in spirit. I know that people are having some difficult times. So for those that are really struggling, I send many prayers and many blessings to you. But I just hope that every single time you come in here, maybe, just maybe, there's something that you walk away with that you can carry with you as a little reminder. And I think if we do that together as a community, I think we're doing pretty good. And so thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being a part of this community. And thank you for helping us grow it just one person at a time, one person at a time, one person at a time. We are incredibly grateful that you're here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless. Namaste and Namaway.